So Manchester United have won 13 games in a row at Old Trafford. And next up is Chris Armas's Leeds. Yes, Chris Armas, the man who was assistant manager under Ralph Rangnick. He's taken over as one of the 3 caretaker managers at Leeds who are on the, they're in the relegation zone? They're way down there anyway. Man United playing Leeds back-to-back. Wednesday at Old Trafford, Sunday at Ellen Road. It's a big week. It's a big week every single week. And I'm going to run through the latest team news from Erik ten Hag from his press conference. Confirmation that Casemiro is suspended after United didn't appeal. We'll speak about Antony Martial, McTominay, the game itself. I'll run through my starting 11. It's all in this video, so make sure you do subscribe if you're new, and make sure you do drop a like on the video. It does help. Let's run through the team news that we found out from the press conference, and we've got confirmation here that Antony Martial, Antony, and Scott McTominay are all going to be missing the game. Antony Martial out injured. And there's honestly no point like wasting any sort of emotional connection to it anymore. It's just, yeah, water is wet. Martial's out injured. He'll come back. He'll be exciting. He'll get injured. Rinse and repeat. I'm done with it. I said that a few weeks ago before he got injured. Same thing stands. Now, Antony being out is a little bit unexpected, but I suppose it's the perfect time for Jadon Sancho. We'll speak about that in a little bit. Scott McTominay is still out injured. That means Casemiro suspended. Eriksen is injured for 3 to 4 months, and McTominay has no return date. Sabitzer, we're going to be speaking about you in this show. This is what Erik ten Hag said about Casemiro. He said, look, we considered appealing it. Yeah, still for me, it's not the right decision, but I don't think we have a chance in the legal process. I don't think that anybody from, was it the PGMO? The referees organisation, however they do appeals, I have no idea what it is. I don't think they look at that footage and go, oh, there was what do they call it? Like a massive error of judgment or whatever. I don't think that United would have won that, so I understand why we didn't appeal. That's what he said about Leeds. He goes, it's about the match of the Rose. It's definitely a big game, but look, Leeds have just sacked their manager. Now, United, obviously, we went into the Aston Villa new manager bounce, and we lost away from home against Unai Emery. And Sean Dyche this week with Arsenal at Goodison Park, they lost. This is different. This is United playing Leeds at home. Leeds are shit this season. They're terrible. They really are. And they've sacked their manager, and they don't have a new manager in. They've got 3 caretaker managers. I want this to be a game where United try and humiliate Leeds. I want this to be a game where I felt, I don't know, like a few points this season that there's like a 4 or 5-0 coming. It feels like it's going, and it's not quite come yet. I want this game to be it on Wednesday night. Under the floodlights at Old Trafford, making it 14 wins in a row and leaving Leeds fans crying in the away end. Now, this was the team that played at the weekend against Crystal Palace. Obviously, there's one major change we're going to be making. That's Casemiro, who comes in for him. Well, we'll run through that. In terms of the back 5, there could be one change, right? Diogo Dalot has been training. Would you put Diogo Dalot back in? I never ever thought that I would say this, but Wan-Bissaka arguably deserves his place in there on form. And I think Erik ten Hag's been pretty consistent as a manager of United so far. When a player's on form, regardless of name, they're performing well, they're going to stay in that team. And I think Diogo Dalot will, hey, look, he might come back in, but I actually imagine that back 5 that started against Crystal Palace will start again. They really held out towards the end of that game. Rio Ferdinand speaking about Lisandro Martinez on the latest episode of 5 this week. He goes, on form right now, I don't think there's really much argument coming from anywhere else. He's dominant, aggressive, a leader, communicates well and shows character, and he's there in the big moments. And you know what it is about Lisandro Martinez. I've said it in my match reaction, and Rio's basically saying it there. In those moments, in those last 10 to 15 minutes of games, you know full well that you can rely on this man here to really sort of lead by example with that defence. And we needed him in those last 15 minutes against Crystal Palace. It should be an easier game against Leeds. Famous last words, I know. But Leeds are just bereft of confidence. They don't have a manager, and they're coming to Old Trafford. If this was Ellen Road, I'd say it's a different conversation. And I think it is a different conversation for Sunday. But the result here tonight could very much decide how that conversation goes. Now, the big thing, of course, the big problem and the big question mark is we've got to do that now for the next 3 games. And obviously a hole in the midfield because we haven't got 11 players there, but nobody replaces Casemiro. Simply put, a player of his quality and his level, we are not going to adequately replace him. So the compromise is the question. How do we best attempt to replace Casemiro in this team? And I think it's pretty... I'll tell you what, right? Had we not signed this bloke, right now we'd have Casemiro suspended for 3 games. We'd have Eriksen out for 4 months. 3 months, 4 months, we'd have McTominay injured, and we have Fred as the only fit senior central midfielder. We'd be probably seeing a midfield of Fred, and Bruno would have to drop deep. Maybe Sancho would go in that number 10. We'd probably be seeing Kobbie Mainoo coming in and getting some game time. Might work out, but geez, we would be wafer thin going into a game every 3 days. Sabitzer comes in straight away into that starting 11. And for me, I was pretty impressed by his cameo against Crystal Palace. I think we saw everything that we expected to see of him. He's going to be a very relentless worker, a quick worker, dynamic with his footwork, quick at progressing the ball, short passes. He's going to be an option. Now, he's definitely better going forward than he is in defensive transitions. And that might be something that we just can't replace. Now, I'm going to find it interesting against Leeds, because I think it will be those two. I think it'll be Sabitzer and Fred in midfield. I'll be interested to see who ends up running forward more. Whether or not you might see this instead. Whether or not you might see Fred operating behind Sabitzer, with Sabitzer given a little bit more freedom to drift forward, or whether it's going to be Fred. I really don't know. You can let me know what you think in the comments below, because neither of them are really suited to trying to be that anchor, but somebody's got to. I imagine he'll probably ask Fred to do it more than Sabitzer, because he maybe trusts Fred. He knows Fred a bit more. You can let me know what you think about that in the comments, but I reckon that's going to be the midfield pair of Sabitzer and Fred, and I think Bruno keeps his place there. It's when you move into attack that you start to change it. Now, Bruno, he can obviously play on the right wing, and now we've had confirmation, by the way, that Antony is missing for this game. So there's one definite change we're going to get up front. But who is going to come in? We've got Sabitzer coming in for Casemiro. And I think, look, Kobbie Mainoo is such an exciting prospect. And he's going to get more minutes. And look, I think you can probably say the same thing about Jadon Sancho. There's a couple of midfield options that we've definitely got. Prospects. Not the ideal scenario to be using them in. Kind of, rather than when you want to play them, you're kind of forced to play them because of injuries to Eriksen, McTominay, and suspension to Casemiro. Iqbal is more like an Eriksen type player. And Kobbie Mainoo is, I wouldn't think it's fair to compare him to Casemiro. He's really a joy to watch. So composed on the ball, very physical, certainly for his age group, that he's always played above at academy levels. And it's interesting to see how that transition into first team football. But one of them's going to come on in this game. Because there's not, well, maybe not. Sabitzer, Fred and Bruno probably have got the legs to last for 90 minutes. And they haven't got the legs to do that against Leeds now. Then Leeds on Sunday. Then Barcelona away. Then Leicester, I think Leicester are home? I think they're at home, actually. And then Barca out. We're going to have to rotate this midfield. We're going to have to see some of these youngsters. And whether that's Kobbie Mainoo coming in for Sabitzer, well, that's Jadon Sancho. It's got to be someone, I think. It'll be interesting to see how the second half of this game goes. Now, the big second question is, of course, who comes in on that right wing? And I think we all know there's quite an obvious answer, isn't there? It's not Jadon Sancho. It's Jadon Sancho, surely. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and Jadon Sancho has had to wait a long old time for this. But I would bring Jadon Sancho, and I would put him out on the right wing. Now, what we actually saw against Forest was this. When Jadon Sancho came on, he operated more as the number 10, with Bruno going out wide. Isn't particularly Bruno's best position, but at various points this season, when we've had players unavailable, he's been the one to drift out there on the right-hand side. Which do you think we'll see? Bruno out on the right with Sancho in the number 10, like we saw against Forest? Or do you think we'll see Bruno in his more natural position as the most advanced of the midfield three, and Sancho back out in his more natural position out on the right wing? I imagine we'll see that. I think we'll see that. And I actually think we'll see that front three. Now, somebody who was really, really impressive against Crystal Palace was Garnacho. I hope he doesn't feel too hard done by the fact that he got taken off, having been put on as a sub. But it was a red card to Casemiro. Circumstances dictated. Ten Hag didn't want to do it, but he had to do it. But against that second goal, Garnacho he received the ball on the left from Shaw. 1, 2, 3 passes, drifted in. Received the ball from Casemiro, drifted back out to the left, back to Shaw, Rashford, goal. He was fantastic. He is fantastic. And I think he might feel begrudged, but because of how good Rashford is playing, you can't not start Rashford. Now, I know so many of you would probably say, Sam, why don't you take Weghorst off, put Rashford through the middle, and start Garnacho on the left? Now, that could possibly happen. But I actually think that Ten Hag is quite enjoying how the overall build-up play and the structure is working with Weghorst there. You might not like the pace of Weghorst. You might think he's slow and he brings the game down a notch. But he's a team worker. I think he's linking the whole attack quite well together. I think we can be more prolific going forward. And I think this is the game for it. And I think I'd rather have Garnacho coming on for an explosive 30 minutes towards the end when Leeds are tired and they're maybe 1 or 2 down, than Garnacho on to start. Just my personal preference, but you might disagree. That will be my starting 11 to face Leeds. Back 5 there of De Gea with Shaw, Wan-Bissaka keeping his place ahead of Dalot. Maybe get Dalot back for Leeds away. Don't know. Varane and Martinez, man. They're the best centre-back partnership we've had in I don't know how many years. I really don't. Fred, Sabitzer and Bruno, with Sabitzer coming in for Casemiro. And the interesting part about this is who's going to play further forward. Who's going to try and be that protector at the back that Casemiro does so well. I think Sabitzer will be aggressive in his pressing and try and do it in sort of winning the ball back in these areas. And I think it'll be Fred kind of trying to win the ball back in those areas. And both of them combined trying to replace what Casemiro is doing. Now, my prediction, I'm going all out. Famous last words. This is going to bite me in the arse. I'm going for a 4-0. This Leeds team are poop right now. Absolute poop. And this United team are just flowing with confidence. At this point in time, let me check where Leeds are on the table. I think they're about, are they 17th? Or are they in the relegation zone now? I don't actually know. They lost at the weekend. They're only out of the relegation zone on goal difference. They are 3 points off the bottom of the Premier League table. It's these sorts of games where United have to be confident going into it. And I am, as a fan, 4-0. Probably won't work. Let's find out whether United do put Leeds to sword. And I hope we do. That's my starting 11. You can let me know yours and your prediction in the comments, as you always do. But Casemiro is suspended for 3 games. How will we cope without him? Sabitzer, looking at you, my friend.